Make me laugh. We were growing our hair. We were cutting class.
Don't miss your chance to be a big winner every week on The Zone. Win Ticket Wednesdays. You can win a pair of tickets to see A Day to Remember at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on July 21st. Listen to The Zone all day Wednesday for your chance to win. Time to welcome Mark Durrant back to the show, BYU basketball radio analyst. Mark, good morning.
Hey, good morning, fellas. Apologize for my voice. I'm a little under the weather, but it makes me feel good to talk to you guys.
Nice.
Hopefully we'll cure what ails you, but I don't think it works that way. You've had a few days now to kind of get away from it all. Are you, when you start thinking college hoops now as you recover, are you thinking about the good times, the wins, the victory at Kansas, obviously high on the list, or, man, that was depressing against Duquesne. You know, they're the little guy with no tournament experience, and BYU was the better seed and coulda, woulda, shoulda, and didn't. Which way are you leaning now, emotionally?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I was pretty bummed about that loss. And part of the reason I was and am is because of those other things you talked about. I mean, they had a great preseason, played terrific, overachieved in the Big 12. We're in mostly every game, got some big wins. And so I probably wouldn't be as bummed about the tournament loss if they hadn't played so well all year long. And I just kind of felt like this team had a little something special with how they were playing, and that would translate into a better finish to the story than they got. But, you know, listen, we three are old guys now. We see that it doesn't always go like the movie script. You know, sometimes it happens like that. And but it was disappointing to see BYU fizzle a little bit at the end, given how well they played this year. But I really like this team. I mean, it was so fun for me to go see all those new places, and this team played with a lot of fire and a lot of heart. And so I love this season. I had such a good time. I love these guys, and part of the frustration is I feel for them too. You work hard. You work so hard all year long to get a decent seed, and BYU had a decent seed. You know, say whatever you want. And they had a matchup that, on paper at least, looked like it was a good matchup for them, and they just didn't get it done that game. But overall, I thought it was just a magnificent year and a great group of guys, and I had a lot of fun.
What does this team need going forward to be successful again in the Big 12 and then, of course, in the NCAAs?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, I think they've got a lot of pieces, and like between last year and this year, bringing back a lot of the same guys, they got a lot better. So I'm hoping if they can bring back the majority of the guys for next year, that they'll again be a lot better than they were this year. So just a natural improvement from guys that have been in the system, have played together, you know, have honed their game and gotten bigger and stronger. And then if you add some guys like, obviously, Colin Chandler's a highly touted recruit that they're looking great for the great things from, and Isaac Davis. And if you get Dawson Baker back healthy, and even guys on the team like Ali Khalifa, if he can get a little more healthy with his knee and get in better shape, I think that would serve him very well. So I don't know that they need to reinvent the wheel or anything. I thought they played good basketball, and now just try and get better. Guys improve their games. I think Dallin Hall is a guy that can really step up and be a leader. I think they need a little bit more leadership than I saw this year, and I think Dallin Hall maybe be a guy that can do that, and a little better shooting. Guys like Trevin Nell, who I think is one of the best shooters in the country. Something happened to him mid-season. He was injured, and he was shooting in the upper 40s before that, and then just never found it again. And if you're a team that relies on threes a lot, you have to have several really good three-point shooters, and I think it hurt to have him fall off a little bit. But so some consistency from the three-point line, get some better shooters in there, get some new blood with Isaac and others coming in, Colin. There's no one answer, but I just think this group, showed that they can get better from year to year, and now we'll have another year to get better together, and we'll be a force to be reckoned with for years to come.
That was a heck of an answer. I honestly thought the answer was going to be NIL. You crossed me up there a little bit. I've heard that despite doubts and maybe some fits and starts in real life, that there's a longer-term commitment to NIL and supporting the basketball program. Have you heard the same thing? And if so, can you give us kind of the parameters you've heard maybe?
Yeah, well, I wish I was more of an expert on the NIL and how the intricacies of that work. I think there's some seating reconfigurations that's going to bring in a significant amount of money from some big-time donors and boosters, and that'll be dedicated to basketball. I think BYU's learning how to do it, and the various collectives. I think they're competitive. They're certainly not at the top, and they're. If they're going to go up against certain schools, they're going to lose as far as money goes. But I think BYU has a lot to offer. They do a lot with, we think of kids, obviously, and obviously you and I and Pat, we want to get paid, and we want to go where we get paid the most money. That just makes sense. But to BYU, I think, with some of the kids from Africa, they've done a great job of supporting their charities and getting them back to Africa and doing things that are really fulfilling for them as people. So you've got money. Obviously, you need to be able to not be laughed at when you offer money in the NIL. And I think BYU's doing stuff to make that happen. But they also offer a lot. It's a good environment to be, and I think the kids. A lot of kids want to just go where they're appreciated and can make a difference. And hopefully BYU offers that. I'm not naive enough to think that they're the only school that can do that, but I think if you talk to the guys on the team and the way that they're generally able to retain guys, it's a pretty good spot. And anyway, I wish I was a billionaire and could just give them all a bunch of money, but I'm not even half as rich as Pat, so I got not a lot to offer. But you certainly have to be competitive in today's world. BYU is always very active in the transfer market, and so they're going to have to be able to say, hey, we want you here, and this is what we can offer, and not be just dismissed out of hand. They have to be competitive.
A lot of talk and hype for this Chandler kid. I believe he was the highest recruit they've ever had and all that stuff, at least here in recent times, maybe back when Sean Bradley and maybe somebody else, Ainge possibly. I don't even know if they had rankings in those days. But where I'm going with this is he's coming off a mission, and you were there. You came off a mission. What do you think is realistically expected from a kid who's coming off a mission to be able to get back and be an effective player that first year?
Well, we don't want to use me as an example because I wasn't very good coming off the mission. I think they're better now of getting guys ready, and Colin gets home pretty early. And, I think Marty Haas with his boys did a great job of kind of figuring out a good path forward to get ready to play the first year you're back from your mission and be successful. I think Colin will have enough smart people around him to, one of the things you try to do is just get it back all at once. And it's a process. And you're also prone to injury because you're trying to get back so quickly. So just ease into it. There's no hurry. And talk to some smart people. And I think he's certainly, kids are so much more mindful of their bodies nowadays and working out and eating right. And I certainly wasn't. So I think the program is better suited for guys to be able to come off a mission and be immediately successful. But it's a huge transition. I mean, it's hard. You look at Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders, they played great last year. But coming off that mission, it was a struggle, and they were highly inconsistent at times. And this year they were just so much better because they had a year under their belt. So it's hard to expect too much out of Colin that first year, notwithstanding all the great things that he's done and his high recruiting status. But I absolutely think he can contribute and be a very important part of this team.
When we talk to football coaches, they always talk about how good the high school football scene is here, how good the coaching is, how much it's improving like every 5 years, 10 years. It was good in 2000, it was better in 05, it was better in 10. It just keeps trending up. I don't hear people say the same thing about basketball. Am I just not talking to the right people? How much talent's on the local scene, and is BYU getting enough of it?
I think there's some good talent. the question maybe is BYU getting enough of it? Obviously, Wasatch Academy produces a lot of good players, and I think the AAU scene is really good in Utah and in the West. And I follow Kevin and Dalton Nixon and some of the teams they put together and the tournaments they go to, and they get really good results. And I think the local scene is maybe better than people know, and you see a lot of teams from outside the state trying to come in and get your players. But BYU's gotten their share. I mean, Richie and Isaac and others and Colin, they're not being shut out by any means. But I think it's actually pretty good scene. And the AAU scene is so different than when I played. I mean, we finished basketball season, and then we're like, what's the next season? Baseball. Let's go play baseball. And these guys, no, it's all year round at a high level. They travel. They get amazing experience. It's probably too much in my view how much they play. It's just like nonstop all year long. But I think it produces some pretty impressive players. And I think Utah can certainly hold their own with any state with the kind of high school product you produce. And I think that you look at BYU's team with Fusini and Richie and all those guys. I mean, I think they've got better athletes than they've ever had on BYU's team, and they maybe need to get even better. But it used to be when we'd go out to shoot the layup lines that we'd look down the court and we're like, man, we do not look like we belong on the same court as these guys. And now BYU can actually look like, when they go up against some of these Big 12 teams, like, yeah, they look like they belong. They've got some real strong, big, athletic guys. And so I think that those days of BYU being kind of deemed as the unathletic and, that type of thing is in the past.
This Jackson Robinson, how much of a difference is it going to make if he returns versus if he doesn't return, the positive and the negative?
Well, I mean, it would be a huge benefit if he returned. He's such a good shooter. And, the type of offense BYU wants to play, that's a premium to have a guy that can not only shoot the three, but could shoot the NBA three and also can finish at the rim. And so, I mean, it just adds a huge weapon. I mean, that's crazy to not think that losing Jackson wouldn't hurt your team. But I think this team all year long was able to show that it wasn't about just one guy. A lot of injuries, including Jackson. They were able to play at a high level without guys. And so, they have good depth, and so it's not the end of the world if you don't have Jackson. But man, what a benefit he would be! What an asset he would be if he did come back. And I held no hope that he would, but he did seem to leave the door open a little bit after the tournament, which gave BYU fans some hope. And I like we were talking about before, I think he's a guy that has enjoyed his time at BYU and values the experience. And maybe you could get him to come back. But either way, he that last game, I think, showed how good he is and how important he can be. He had a beautiful game, and he needs to maybe, whatever he does, whatever level he goes to, he needs to maybe be a little bit more consistent and kind of raise his intensity level. He's just kind of a smooth guy, easygoing guy, but at that high level in the NBA or wherever, he's going to really need to be focused and intense and get after it a little bit more. But he's a tremendous kid, a great young man, and a great player.
There was more stability on the roster this year and less transfer portal action than there had been in previous years. Do you think that's where it's going to go going forward, or is every year a one-off depending on what is needed?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend to think with the group as it is that that I think most of these guys are going to come back. I think they like each other. They spend a lot of time together and would like to continue what they're building. So I think with this group, it's probably likely that most of them will come back, but that's just this group. I mean, I think otherwise it's a one-off. I mean, from year to year, BYU, there's been years BYU's lost a bunch of guys. And so it depends on the group. It depends on the year. I think generally speaking, year to year, you're going to lose more than you ever anticipate. But I don't know. I just get a feeling about this group because they came back last year, and I think they're going to have a tendency to want to continue to get better together and like each other. And so I'd be surprised if they lost a lot of guys this year, but you never know in this environment.
You think it's also both a blessing and a curse that essentially your season, to a good extent, not completely, but to at least some extent, is judged by how much success you have in the NCAA tournament? And then I'm wondering, man, it just seems like the pressure feeds off itself for Mark Pope. They got to win in the tournament next year, so there'll be some level of, but no matter how good they do in a Big 12, which I think will be tougher next year than it was this year.
It's a lot of pressure. As you felt it this year. I mean, there have been years that BYU felt maybe lucky to get in the tournament and did not perform well. And it's like, well, it was a great season. We made it. The expectation was not just to make it this year. It was to win in the first round and be competitive in the second round and maybe make a special run. Who knows with this team? And so there was a lot of pressure. I think that may be factored into it. I mean, BYU did some uncharacteristic things. They were 11 for 22 on layups in that game, and that kind of points to guys that were a little bit maybe amped up or nervous or whatever, because that's atypical of that BYU team to shoot that way. And you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and given BYU's history, which has not been particularly bright in the NCAA tournament, this team, I think the expectations on this team put a lot of pressure on them, and it is unfortunate, like I said, to have that, because it is, I think, in most ways determinative of how you look at a team in the long run historically on how they do in the NCAA tournament. And so even if they were a really good team, you look at that result, you think, well, it was just another one of those years for BYU. And so that's frustrating, because I think this team was better than a one and done in the tournament, but that's how it worked out. Now, what you want to do is get to a place where you have the type of team that can, is so good that you even get a better seed. You're looking at a 3 or a 4, and you have real good depth, and you're accustomed to being there, and it's not a new experience. And that way you can kind of get the monkey off the back a little bit and win a couple games, and then it kind of builds on itself. It's kind of the Gonzaga model. Just keep getting there, and now everybody expects Gonzaga to get through the weekend. I mean, no matter how good a team they have, it's just they win games in the tournament, but it wasn't always that way, and Gonzaga had to earn that and had to build that program, and I hope that BYU's doing that with Mark Pope and can get to that point where it's not only expected that they win, but that they actually win and are a force in the tournament.
Well, we appreciate a few minutes this morning. Hopefully you feel better soon. And when you know which fabulous trip you're getting next fall/winter, let us know, whether, Maui, Honolulu, the Bahamas, Puerto Rico. I mean, you've been to some pretty awesome places. I don't know what you're going to add to the list, but I suspect you're going to add to the list.
Well, that is a good perk. I think San Diego's on the list. I mean, I know you love San Diego. There's no better place than that, but we'll see if we can get some other trips. But that is a nice perk of doing this job, is getting to go on a nice trip every year. I bring my family, and, that's good stuff.
All right. Good luck with that, Mark. We appreciate it as always. Thank you.
Thanks, boys. Take it easy.
Mark Durrant, BYU basketball radio analyst, joining us right here on The Zone. Coming up after the break, we give away 2 more tickets to see the Utah Jazz and the Houston Rockets Friday night. It's a Jazz Ticket Tuesday. If you don't win next, Jake and Ben will have tickets at 10:30 and 11:30 right here on The Zone.
Now let's get this party started.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
This story is crazy about becoming an ultimate Aggie, which apparently is getting up on that bowl naked. What bowl is it? Is it the one that's by the Estes Center? Isn't that bowl like bucking? I'm just wondering how 5 nude men could fit on that.
It's a big bowl.
5 nude men could fit on that?
5 smaller men, probably could make that work. There you go. That's the size of the thing right there.
Okay, it's not bucking. You could probably fit upwards of 10 naked men on that. So in order for you to be the ultimate Aggie, you have to be naked?
Yes.
I did not know that this was a thing.
See, I would think if you were going to be an ultimate Aggie, that it needs to be solo.
Because these 5 were not solo.
And that's where a lot of guys up at Utah say, like, hey, let's maybe dial that down a little bit.
Easy. One ultimate Aggie at a time.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
So I never bet on baseball or any other sports, or never have asked somebody to do it on my behalf. And I have never went through a bookmaker to bet on sports. Up until a couple of days ago, I didn't know that this was happening. In conclusion, Ipe has been stealing money from my account and has told lies.
It is time to get you up to speed on everything we're talking about. 9 a.m. Slacker Radio Hotlines brought to you by Tim Dahle Mazda Southtown. Find your new Mazda at the south end of the valley at Tim Dahle Mazda Southtown. That's Tim Dahle Mazda Southtown in Sandy. That is Shohei Ohtani's new interpreter, translating for Shohei, who had a press conference, media availability, but took no questions. There's an ongoing criminal investigation. I'm sure he had lawyers advising him not to take any questions. But went out there and spoke for a few minutes and said he didn't know anything. It seems like there's three ways this can go, PK. One, he didn't know anything. He got ripped off. Two, he didn't gamble, but he's friends with his ex-interpreter, so he pays the debt so that something really bad doesn't happen. And three, he was gambling, and the interpreter's taking the fall for him, or maybe they were both gambling, and he's lying about it now. People who know more than us about technology, I think they're convinced that they're going to be able to dig into it and find out how this money actually got transferred, and was there a way for Shohei to know or not. And so I guess we give it a little time, that plays out, and we get some clarity if people who know more about technology than you and I are right. Do you have a gut instinct, or would you prefer in something this hot to handle, not to have any assumptions, figuring it'll play out and we'll know?
I'm going to believe him.
The guy somehow got access to his bank accounts and ripped him off. Had whatever PIN numbers, passwords, whatever it took to do a little online banking and wire transfer.
Yeah. Why would it be anything else?
Because they don't know why he'd shared the information so the guy could actually transfer the money. And if he's really friends with the guy and the guy's really in trouble, even if Shohei had nothing to do with the gambling, I can see why he would try to bail the guy out. And I get how bad that looks later, but in the moment, when you're sticking up for somebody who you really like and they're in a really tough spot, I get how you do it, even if there's consequences down the line, and maybe you don't consider them at the time. Just like in the moment, you're trying to help somebody you care about, and you do the wrong thing trying to do the right thing.
There's no record of Shohei Ohtani living a stream of lies. Doesn't mean it's not
possible.
reality.
Yeah, it's possible.
Whereas we now know the other guy was saying stuff about his credentials that weren't true.
Not true, right.
Isn't there two things? A university and then some work with the Red Sox or something?
And so if the resume was lied about, well, what else was going on that was under the cover of darkness and not known?
I mean, before I went to the Mesa Tribune, I had put at the Casa Grande Dispatch that I won the Pulitzer, and they never checked it.
Woo! They just didn't have the research staff.
Patrick Kinahan, Pulitzer Prize winner.
I brought down that community.
You were the watchdog.
Yeah.
And so he's got a pattern here where Shohei doesn't.
Yep.
But I've also read stuff, wait a second here, man. This goes, and you're telling me that that's not, you knew nothing about it, and then out of the blue, a week or two earlier, you announced you're getting married. What was going on there? That was strange. But, until you've been in a man's shoes, not literally, obviously, with the Japanese media and the way they cover their celebrities, and right now Shohei Ohtani is probably the top celebrity in the country, maybe. I don't know.
If he's not, he's very close.
Yeah.
They're clearly, there are businesses in Japan dedicating a lot of resources to providing as much information about his life as possible and tracking him as much as they can.
So how in the world did he keep that under wraps?
So what other secrets could he possibly keep under wraps?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you can let your mind wander all over the place. It's a bad look. I hope that gets resolved as painlessly as possible, just
Quickly.
for him and for the sake of MLB. They're 48 hours away from opening day. They had a great season last year with all the rule changes, and people embraced it. Blah blah blah. You'd like to see it continue on a little bit of a high, rather than have one of their premier, if not the premier.
Yeah, the premier. I suppose in local markets there are guys who are more popular, but I can't believe there's anybody who's more popular across the sport. I mean, in Philly, somebody loves a Philly more than they love him. But across the sport, he's the guy.
That is simply Bryce Harper.
Yeah, it would be Bryce Harper. You're right. In New York, somebody might love a Yankee more than they love Shohei, but
that's Aaron Judge.
That's exactly who it would be, yes.
Aaron Judge won.
Hey, give Giancarlo Stanton some hope.
No.
Nope.
It's Soto.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, Soto's probably the guy.
Yeah, because he speaks English, and he's charismatic, and he seems to like the microphones.
And he's young. He could be good there for a long time.
Right. He's got the look. He's got the Yankee. He came with the Yankee look.
It all adds up if it works, but we've seen times in New York he thought it was going to work, and it didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But, I mean,
But it could. And if it could be glorious.
He's got the skills. And there's a lot of folks from his country that live in that area. But Shohei has really just taken over. Pretty much you don't have to follow baseball to the Shohei Ohtani. So for the sake of the game and for the sake of the human being, for the sake of all human beings, who's going to be rooting crap to come upon human beings?
Well, I'm sure there are people, but you try not to hang out with them.
Which is why I keep my distance from you.
Yeah, for 20-plus years. That almost makes sense.
Well, yeah, but you're on that side. I'm over here.
Well, I am. I am sitting 4 to 5 feet away from you.
Right, and I don't ever let you get closer.
And then
I've never allowed you to touch me, nor will I ever.
Stop sliding so far away.
I know, and I know how you feel about Yacht because you make him stay in the next room.
Yacht? Yacht's a cancer.
Damn straight.
This is something you shouldn't embrace, Yacht.
He's Mark Jackson on the Jazz.
You think you should be starting, don't you? Throw Kirilenko an alley-oop and then tell him some more about it. Scotty G joined us earlier this morning. What will the Aggies do? Intriguing. It's one of those, and Scott invoked the whole glass half full, half empty metaphor during the interview. I mean, actually, might have done it multiple times. The good news is they had a great season. The bad news is the coach is taking off, and multiple players are probably gone as well. You can go back and listen wherever you get your podcasts. Scotty started to run down the roster of his expectations for some guys and where he thought the offers would be, and it's about what you'd expect. The better players who score more points are going to be heavily pursued. He went into a little bit on the job search with Danny Sprinkle. Washington was not the only school interested. He went into that. You've talked about you knowing for 2 weeks, and I asked him how long he knew, and it seems like he had a pretty good idea, really even 6 weeks ago, that it was happening, which is why Utah State's going to move quickly because they also had a good idea.
Well, yeah, I wasn't talking to Utah State people until Vegas.
Right.
And then when I got down there, they were there.
Right.
I was in their team hotel. Put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, there you go.
It's going to equal 4 every time. Yep. And that's why I kept saying it was going to happen.
Yep.
The good thing is that he did it quick. He didn't drag it out. I think that's good for the university.
Yes, and Scotty went into that as well in detail.
Yeah. And last year they got decimated. Could you recreate that magic again? Probably not.
That's what Danny Sprinkle said in one of his last media availabilities.
Right.
This was incredible, but you have to admit that for whatever skill and talent was involved in it, there was a little bit of magic as well, and replicating that would be dicey.
Although you can see how it happened in retrospect. You know, a foreign guy who ends up at the Big Sky, his talent level is better than the Big Sky, and a Darius Brown who's undersized, but yet his talent level and his moxie are far beyond where he played.
I think the Darius Brown story is more, probably more common. Osseber had upside and tapped into it. He was more dominant at Utah State than he was at Montana State. That's pretty unusual. But he kept working, kept growing, kept getting better, all the stuff coaches preach all the time, and he did. But I mean, you look at his stats, and
Yeah, I don't know what was going on in Montana State. I didn't follow it.
Behind other players and not good enough, I guess. Right?
But his body, his size, his skill level, you can see it. So can they do that again? I don't know. But get their work done and come to a decision in which you feel absolutely this is the best dude, and then go ahead. And there's no reason why the program has to take a significant drop. Since they don't win NCAA tournament games every year, would I expect it next year? Probably not. But would I expect it next year if Sprinkle was still the coach? I don't know that I would. But go get somebody who's dynamic. It's all about recruiting, man. Whittingham will just drill that into your head over and over and over again. Don't be praising me. But if you want to praise me as a coach, praise our ability, as Urban said, to find guys and develop them and make them into draft picks. And that's what Urban was talking about when he was speaking on Saturday. And we know Utah has done a phenomenal job of that in football. So that's what you got to have in basketball. It's real simple. You want to be good, get a good coach, and get good players. Now, going about that way to get that is not simple, but the path to it is hard, but the formula is easy. It's easy to understand. Have a good coach and have good players, because that's what's going to happen. So right now that the Sprinkle is gone, so be it. Best of luck in Washington. I'm not going to follow you that much. You're in the Big Ten, maybe in the NCAAs. If you're in the Pac-12, I'd follow you religiously. But here, I'm more interested right now to see what the roster looks like and how many of these players that are potentially available to move. Because if they stay, then they should have a pretty good team next year. And I realize they got a couple of players. Brown is gone. He's out of eligibility, right? So
he's done.
He's out. So then
He
you got
played
some
3 at Northridge, 1 at Montana State, and a 5th year at Utah State.
And so you got some guys here, and if you can bring somebody in quick, and they with the staff can get them into thinking we need to be here, okay, then you'll probably be pretty good again next year. And even if you're not, bring in a new coach who can find ways to build a roster in the manner that Sprinkle did last year. Who's to say you aren't good again next year?
Well, the cool thing is, even if they miss on this coach, I think they've really established a reputation as a place where a coach can go and further their career. So that'll last for a few coaching hires. They'll have something. They'll have a story to sell here for the rest of the decade. If you're good, you can come here and really elevate your status in the profession. DJ and PK, when we come back, your feedback next.
And it's all over almost here.
Don't go nowhere.
It's time for your feedback now. Rhino at RK Davidson. What? Utah State's AD didn't hire someone after the game? I guess they only fire people right after the game. But USU should embrace who they are and what they're doing. They've been really successful. They made some nice runs. Always hire the best you can.
Go for mediocre and hope for the best.
Well, the question was, hire one of your own or a hot outsider. He goes, the best you can. They hired one of their own and they ended up firing him. They've hired 3 outsiders and been poached. I'd stick with a hot outsider.
Okay. Yeah, I can't argue that. Reasonable.
Terrell says the hot outsider ride has gotten us 2 regular season Mountain West titles, one of them outright, 1 shared, 3 second-place finishes, 2 Mountain West tournament titles, 5 NCAA berths, an NIT berth, and an NCAA win in the last 6 years.
Pear tree.
With our last insider, we finished 8th, and 7th with 0 postseason berths.
Yeah, but it was a hard 7, though. All right, get the best candidate. All right, you made your point. You backed it up with some numbers.
Yep. U State Iceman, is Utah football not doing the raise your grow them up coaches? Why would US not do that? And why wouldn't it work for USU?
It could work.
But they've got to intentionally hire an assistant coach who has some ties to the program.
See, the problem here is you look at Kyle Whittingham, and that's a good point Utah State Iceman has raised. He doesn't have a huge circle.
Right.
Because he's not a hobnobber. The dude coaches, hangs with family, and a few others. And that's it. Very simple man when it comes to that.
He's only worked at 2 schools. Somebody who's moved around. Like Grimes knows a bunch of people because he's moved around to a bunch of different jobs and he's worked with a bunch of different people.
All portions of the country.
Right.
Yes. And so you've got that situation there. So you look at his staff, And it's a high preponderance of guys
who played at the U.
Yeah.
Because that's who he knows, because he's been to the U.
Right. And so he stayed there. And so you bring in an outsider. Does he know some Aggie who's coaching somewhere?
You would have to serve him up and tell him you're going to get this job, but you really have to do it for him.
And they don't do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You can be encouraged. Like Chris Hill
encouraged
did not
Urban.
Strongly encouraged to hire Kyle and to Urban's
didn't
credit,
order him. Didn't order him.
No, he retained him.
Right.
And that's a large part of 34, 32, 33 years of pretty good success.
Another question we've got it here this morning. In light of Danny Sprinkle's one and done, should coaches show more loyalty? Landon, better question. If you as an employee can quadruple your salary, should you not do it? 99 times out of 100, the answer to that question will be yes, quadruple it. We are, or should be, a free people, and this comes with freedom. There's no sour grapes here. Landon turns Danny loose. Hey, there's a number a coach has to have for the buyout to leave, and there's a number the school has to pay if they want to fire the coach. So it's all, how do you say, PK? Preordained when the contract is signed. So there you go. This is how the industry works. And it ain't changing.
I mean, it's been working that way for so long, so you're absolutely right. I mean, there's just no argument there.
Yak, are we a little late giving away Jazz tickets? You know the phrase better late than never? Apply it now. Jazz tickets that we were supposed to give away at 9:30 and then somehow got distracted and didn't do it. Here they are, 801-575-ZONE. And if you don't win now, 2 tickets to see the Jazz and the Rockets Friday night at the Delta Center. Jake and Ben are going to hook you up at 10:30 right here on The Zone.